Good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome to On Point. I am your servant and Senator Carla J, welcoming you to another edition of my radio talk show called On Point, heard every other Tuesday here on WSTA 1340 AM, the People's Station, every other Tuesday from 6 to 6:30 p.m. So I want to thank you for joining me for another edition of On Point. Now this evening, I have joining me a very special guest. And this year we are definitely celebrating our 175th Emancipation Commemoration. But with that, we also have an aspect of our emancipation this year that we want to talk about. And so with me this evening is none other than Miss Ayesha Morris, who is president of the Dollar for Dollar Culture and History Committee Incorporated. Good evening, Miss Morris.
Good evening, Senator Joseph. Thanks for having me today.
It's my pleasure. And I will talk to her a little bit more because she has an upcoming fantastic event that is coming up that everybody should take a part of and engage in, especially when we're talking about our history. Now, I don't want to confuse the 175th Emancipation Commemoration with what Ms. Morris is going to be doing, because that too is a very historic event, really commemorating some of the trailblazers here in the Virgin Islands. But she's going to talk a little bit more about that as we proceed with today's talk show. So I'm really thankful that she is here. And there are other members of the Dollar for Dollar Cultural and History Committee, and they include Jawed David and Ms. Dara Monifa Cooper. So before I go in and have a discussion, I want, and everybody should know by now, really somber news that one of my mentors, former Senator, the Honorable George E. Goodwin, passed last week, Monday, and he was a man for all people. Commitment, dedication, and unity were part of Senator Goodwin's campaign slogan. This accurately described him to a T. I could fondly remember time spent working with Senator Goodwin in his legislative office in the 23rd legislature. He was a businessman. You could all remember Goodwin Accounting, who gave unselfishly, and a public servant who believed in servant leadership. Earlier this year, I sponsored legislation to honor this Caribbean giant for his outstanding contribution to the Virgin Islands. The cricket field slated to be built in Estate Nazareth will be named in his honor, and it will be named George E. Goodwin Cricket Field. He also, as part of that legislation, he also will receive the Virgin Islands Medal of Honor for his tremendous contribution to our territory. He definitely fought for social justice, and that is something that should be highlighted. During the 60s and early 60s, and influx of a lot of migrants from the Caribbean region came looking for employment opportunity, and their children were not allowed to enter public school system. Mr. Goodwin, Senator Goodwin, took the matter to court, and he won. They won the case, and that's how we have a lot of the migrant students could come here and be educated once they are once they haven't received their age of maturity, 18, they can be educated in our public school system. What a tremendous accomplishment that was. And I want to even mention that because of that, the government received a lot of federal funding for not only education but housing. So to support the influx and the large amount of migrant workers that were coming to the Virgin Islands. So he definitely was a trailblazer and will be fondly remembered. And I saw a lot of expressions from persons who remembered him. One of the things, Ayesha, that I remember from him, and it's a very comical thing, he refused to own a cell phone. And he would use your cell phone. People would buy cell phones for him, but he never wanted to use a cell phone. And incidentally, we take that little thing for granted. So I consider myself blessed to have known and worked and been mentored by such a great man. May he rest in eternal peace. And I want us to just pause for a few minutes of silence. Thank you. Now, here are some quick updates. September 15th, the legislature met in session to vote on the land swap, and it was voted upon and favorably approved. Today, I signed off on, as the legislative secretary, I signed off on the bill to be able to transmit it to the governor. Yes, some persons were adamant, especially St. Jonians, my brothers and sisters in St. John were adamantly against it, some of them. And I really want to commend Mr. David and Susan Silverman, because when we met in St. John, we had families, this is local families, saying that they were going to come together and present a alternative. But Mr. David and Susan Silverman were the only one. But what he was presenting was to really would have expanded the National Park Service land within the contiguous, the island of St. John. This land swap is to swap a key out there. So the national park, and I think the contention with all of the residents is that the national park has acquired a lot of land. But if you look at it and do your research, is a lot of our local people have given a sizable amount of land donating to the national park. And they have sold their properties to individuals, and then those individuals then donate the property to the national park. Case in point, Ms. Bishop. Ms. Bishop lived on the national, which is estate Catherineburg, which the government will be acquiring to build the school. She donated that property while she was alive and living on that estate Catherineburg property to the national park. And they in turn gave her some restrictions that she couldn't build X, Y, and Z while she lived there. Okay. And sometimes you have to dig a little deeper to try to understand the dynamics at play. Is it that people are donating while they are alive so that they could avoid paying the property taxes? I just raised that question. That needs further discussion and investigation, because it may have those type of implications why people feel they want to live on their property and then convey it while they're living to the National Park Service. So that's a conversation we need to have. So we did vote on it favorably. There were some persons who were opposed, but I really remember vividly, even though it's over 35 years ago, when I attended Eudora-Kent High School, and my classmate from St. John used to tell us how hard and difficult their hardship, that they had to leave from all the way Coral Bay, wake up before the crack of dawn, leave from Coral Bay, catch a ferry from Cruz Bay to St. Thomas, I will tell you, they used to be sleeping, and some of them, you know, when a person in a really deep sleep because they're really tired, man, they used to be snoring in class. We used to be hitting them until sometimes they snore and they're drooling, right? How can they learn? We used to have to work together as a team to assure that our St. John brothers and sisters will be able to graduate. But a good thing is, I'll tell you this, many of them were highly intelligent. St. Jonians, they have a lot of highly intelligent St. Jonians who went to school at Julius Eastborough in St. John, and when they came over to Eudorican High School, they had really a strong foundation. But I always used to feel for them because I was like, wow, you guys are really waking up so early in the morning, have to get on a ferry, and sometimes you think it's smooth sailing. No, sometimes they have to withstand rough waters to come to St. Thomas to be educated. And this land swap isn't just something that came up yesterday or in July or last year or 20. This has been discussed from since over 50 years. And I'm 53 years old. That's a long time in coming. Let's get the school built and provide a shelter for our people and our brothers and sisters in St. John. Also, I want to note that today, actually Friday the 15th through October 15th, is Hispanic Heritage Month. Hola muchachos y muchachas, mi amigos, mi amigas. Happy Hispanic Month. I take this opportunity to wish everybody of Hispanic descent in our community happy Hispanic Month. It is a time to recognize valuable contributions made by persons of Hispanic descent across the nation and here in our community. The contributions span from the government service to the private sector, a whole rich culture of persons who came from African descent, and I really want to thank them for their countless contributions. We had the Committee on Budget, Appropriations, and Finance met today, and they passed the budget, and tomorrow the Committee on Rules and Judiciary will also review and discuss and act on the government budget, which is over almost $1 billion, almost $1 billion. So we have to take a look at that tomorrow. I'm on the Committee on Rules and Judiciary, and I really would like, and I'm sure we would have an opportunity to have a discussion on it. And I want to say that kudos to the chairperson of the Committee on Budget, Appropriations, and Finance, the Honorable Donna Fret Gregory, as well as all of the committee members and the non-committee members and the post-audit staff led by my professor, a former professor. I always consider him my professor still, Professor Samuel. They did a really great job, and his team. It was really a lot of hard work. I was also participated in the budget markup. So we believe we are going to, and we have put together a balanced budget based on our revenues and our expenses. So that's one of the other things that we did, and we have legislative session that is scheduled for Friday, the 22nd. So legislative session is scheduled for that day. And we also have a Committee on Education and Workforce Development meeting that is scheduled for Thursday, I believe. So we have a lot going on. Before I turn it over to Ms. Morris, I want to also mention that the Committee on Government Operations and Veterans Affairs and Consumer Protection is scheduled to meet on September 26th in the Fritz E. Lowette's Legislative Conference Room in St. Croix. We have several major legislation to be considered, and one is an act amended Title 29 Virgin Islands Code by adding Chapter 25 to enact the Public-Private Partnership Agreement. That's the P3 Okay, that's been something that's been talked about a lot. Then we have an act honoring and commending Ralph A. Dishabert, MD, for outstanding contributions in the medical field to the people of the Virgin Islands and his many civic contributions to the community. And then finally, we have Bill number 35, that's 0125, an act honoring and commending the late Police Lieutenant Melbourne Clark posthumously for his dedication, service, and contributions to the Virgin Islands community in law enforcement. And then finally, the Committee on Government Operations and Veterans Affairs and Consumer Protection invites the taxi cab men and women in St. Thomas to a town hall meeting. This is scheduled for Friday, that's next week Friday, September 29th from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. at the Earl B. Otley Legislative Chambers. In the Earl B. Otley Legislative Chambers. So you need to come out. We have already sent out invitation. My staff will be delivering flyers to the various taxi men and women in our community so we could hear your concern. We have invited the taxi cab executive director, Ms. Vernice Gums. So we really want to hear what you have to say. We know there is some trouble there. I have been down there and several times, and the office is either closed, two, there's no one to collect any of the fees. The cashier is not available. So we have a lot of issues that we are dealing with. So that's coming up again. The town hall meeting with the taxi cab men and women is scheduled for Friday, September 29th, 2023 from 6 to 8 p.m. in the Earl B. Otley Legislative Hall. So that's something we want to really be sure that, happen, and we want to encourage everyone to come out and state your point because we have a lot of issues. Now, for Our Lady of our half an hour, Ms. Morris, welcome to On Point. I'm very thankful that you were able to meet and come with us, here this afternoon, really on short notice, my guest. And that's something I have to mention. They were slated to be here from the Virgin Islands Labor Management Committee, Ms. Yara Tutine, and we didn't get any confirmation. In fact, I went down to their office in Niski today. My staff went earlier in the day, and no one was in their office. And we called and called. She's been calling for days after they had confirmed. And then I went down there. This would have been about 2 o'clock this afternoon, and still no one was there in the office. So we went there early this morning, and that's before 10 o'clock. And then, no, actually it was after 10 o'clock, but definitely before lunchtime, and then this afternoon as well. And still no one was there. So we have to just try to follow up and see what's happening with that committee. So, Ms. Morris.
Senator Joseph.
Well, good evening.
Good evening.
I'm really thankful that you joined us on a short notice. So tell us a little bit more about the Dollar for Dollar Culture and History Committee, Inc. What went into your thoughts? Because I know you're one of the founding members.
Yes. Thanks.
What went into your thoughts to actually form this organization?
Certainly. So in 2006, this was the first time that we came up with the idea to have a tour celebrating the coal workers of the Virgin Islands. What went into it for me was seeing a picture of a coal worker.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, it's the picture on the cover of this book. So you have a woman that I saw in a guidebook, and she was wearing a shirt that represents the Danish flag.
Mm-hmm.
And you see her standing there with two, what looked to me like boulders, like big, big rocks on top of her head.
May I use it to show
Certainly.
our online viewers? There it is. This is what Miss Morris is referring to. And these are the two big boulders that she's referring to. Wow, it does look like boulders. For listening audience, it does look like boulders, and she's balancing them well with a pipe in her mouth.
Exactly.
And her hand on her hips.
Yes, arms akimbo.
Akimbo.
So this was a guidebook that I was looking at the time, and when I read the information accompanying it, I learned more about the coal workers of the Virgin Islands who had to carry 100 pounds of coal in baskets on their head up steep gangplanks to fuel the ships in St. Thomas Harbor.
Wow.
Yes, and they had to carry hundreds of these, 100 in order to make $1 a day.
Wow. 100 trips just to make $1. So what time did they start? Like maybe before the crack of dawn?
Right, so oftentimes it was before the crack of dawn. Actually, whenever a ship came into the harbor,
Yes.
be it early in the morning, late at night, all kinds of weather, raining, pouring, hot sun, it did not matter. Once a ship came in to the harbor, a signal would be blown and they would all come out to do this work. This is how they made their living at the water's edge. And in 1892, they decided that they wanted to be paid what they were worth. At that time, in 1892, they were being paid in Mexican silver.
Wow.
And the Mexican silver, the value of it decreased significantly, but they were still being paid as though it was the same value. And they weren't able to, meet their basic needs and so forth. So they protested. They decided to have a strike. They refused to go fuel the ships on that day. It was actually September 12th in 1892.
Mm-hmm.
And they gathered on Main Street, up and down, protesting at the different steamship offices, the police office, which was Fort Christian at that time, all the way down to the Market Square, which is where they actually had their demands met. So this is an event that even the newspapers at that time reported that it was seldom in the history of St. Thomas that such a occurrence had happened, and it's something that just gives inspiration.
And it was led by women.
It was mostly led by women. There were mostly women who were the coal carriers, but there were also men.
Okay.
But mostly women, and our legendary figure, Queen Keziah, was said to have led that particular strike.
Awesome. So in saying that, you have an event that's coming up when to just commemorate and probably look at and commemorate and celebrate this 1892 event.
Correct. So next Saturday, which is September 30th, from 4:30 p.m. to 7 p.m., we'll be having a walking tour, which is how we've been celebrating and commemorating this event for the past 18 years. This year makes our 18th year.
Wow, that's a lot of years you've been. Go ahead.
It's hard to imagine that it's been that long. But we'll be meeting at the Market Square at 4:30 and proceeding to some of the historic sites throughout the town. It's an interactive tour. We ask people to wear white in solidarity with the coal workers. There will be bambula dancing, which was also a feature of this historic strike. The women were dancing bambula in the streets.
Yes.
We will have drumming. There'll be African drumming. And there'll be persons giving tour interpretation, etc. But it's a chance to sing along. We'll have Glenn Kwabena Davis along with us. We'll have Nadine Marchena Ken giving some tour guide. We'll have Senator Myron Jackson doing the libation. We have this year La Monet Morris, the reigning Carnival Queen for St. Thomas. She'll be
very familiar with her.
Yes, serving as our Queen Keziah this year.
Wow, that's a powerful lineup you have there.
Yeah, so we're really looking forward to it, and we have some really great people who were working with us this year to pull it off.
So is there any cost associated with persons wanting to participate? Do you have a cost, or is there a registration fee for a person who want to actually participate in the Dollar for Dollar Culture and Historic Tour?
We're actually offering this tour free to the public.
What? No.
Yes, we
Free.
we have offered it free to the public for the past 18 years, thanks to some sponsorships that we've gotten over the years. One of our big sponsors has been the Virgin Islands Council on the Arts, and we have several partners who work with us in order to make it happen.
Okay. I think this will be a fantastic opportunity for some of our schools to participate in. So if you are a teacher, there's still time to get in your paperwork and have it be part of your field trip. For those of you who are language arts, social studies, specifically teachers and instructors for young people, so that they can actually learn from the experts and persons in our community about this strike. This really was a job action.
Yes.
Yeah, it was a job action that took place, and they won. They got what they wanted, an increase, and also they were able to get their payment in a different currency.
Correct. So
Yes.
this is why we even call it dollar for dollar.
Mm-hmm.
They were demanding to be paid in Danish dollars.
Right.
And they wanted to be paid dollar for dollar is what, it said that they asked and requested, and they were successful in getting that.
So if a person or school want to participate, what would they need to do so?
Well, they're welcome to just come on out. We've actually been putting some letters out to the schools requesting if you have any school groups who would want to perform. I know we used to have a bambula dancers at
Muller, yes.
We used to have Kwelbe bands in the schools and so forth. I don't know the status of that right now, but anyone who wants to participate, especially our students, you can just come out on that day. You can check us out on Facebook. We have a Facebook page, Dollar for Dollar. On Facebook, you can email us at dollarfordollar@gmail.com. And we just really look forward to seeing everyone out. And like you said, Senator Joseph, it's so important to pass on this history to our students. We want you all to have an experience that's not just you read something in a textbook, but to be able to feel it and identify with it and really be proud of what our ancestors have done in order to make our lives a little bit easier today.
Yes, they were true trailblazers, and we are definitely standing firm on those ladies' and gentlemen's shoulders. Miss Morris, my time is up. It always goes really fast. It's 30 minutes, but I want to thank you so much for being here. Remember, this is a Dollar for Dollar Culture and History Tour is taking place next week, Saturday, September 30th. You're meeting up at Market Square, and we're going to walk from Market Square to Emancipation Garden. Wear white. Yes. Wear white, come with a good attitude and an open mind to expand your knowledge about our culture. I really want to thank you so much, Miss Morris, for being here really on short notice. Also, I really want to take this opportunity to really thank my Joseph Action Committee for their resounding support, and thank you to listening audience for tuning in tonight for another edition of On Point. Remember, my bi-weekly radio talk show is heard here in WSTA 1340 AM from 6 to 6:30 p.m. every other Tuesday. And I just want to say thank you so much for joining us. Our next program is going to be on October 3rd, and you could always follow me on Facebook or Instagram, and check out my webpage at senatorcarlajoseph.com, and you could call the office at 340-693-3455. 515. Don't forget, we have the town hall meeting that is scheduled for September 29th, beginning at 6 o'clock at the Earl B. Otley Legislature building, and that is regarding the Taxi Cab Commission, the taxi cab industry. Again, thank you so much, Ms. Morris, for being here, and all the best. This is going to be a resounding success. I want to make sure I have time to come because I really enjoy these walks and really in learning a lot more about my culture and our Virgin Islands, especially those persons who have blazed a trail for us to be here today and enjoy some of the liberties, many of the liberties that we have. So thank you and have a pleasant good evening. Stay on point, Virgin Islands, and have a blessed evening. Thank you.